There is a city in Newfoundland that has lost people in every census for the last 20 years, and it still has a shopping mall, a hospital, and a university. There is a mining city in Manitoba where the company that built the whole town is now quietly trying to sell the mine and leave. And there is a town in British Columbia that burned to the ground 5 years ago and just got evacuated all over again this past June. When you hear that, your first instinct is to think these are just sad, remote places that we're always going to empty out. And you would be wrong, because the real reason people are leaving these towns is the same reason your own town could be next, and almost nobody says it out loud. Stay to number 1, because it is the one town on this list where the emptying is still happening right now on camera. Number 10, Corner Brook, Newfoundland. This is not a ghost town. It is a real city on the west coast of the island, with a paper mill, a hospital, and Grenfell campus of Memorial University, and it is shrinking anyway. According to Statistics Canada, Corner Brook's population fell to 19,316 in the 2021 census, down 2.5% from 2016. And it has now been losing people in essentially every census going back 2 decades. The median age in Corner Brook is 50 years old. That is the number that matters. When the mill town stops attracting young families and the people who stay keep getting older, the decline does not announce itself with a closure notice. It just shows up, one graduating class at a time, in a census release most people never read. Corner Brook is the slow version of what the rest of this list does fast. Number 9, Dawson Creek, British Columbia, at mile 0 of the Alaska Highway in the province's northeast. Here are the numbers, one after another, because the numbers are the story. Statistics Canada ranked Dawson Creek among the 10 fastest declining small urban centers in the entire country, with a population drop of 5.4% between 2016 and 2021. This is oil and gas country, and when the energy work slows, the people who came for the paycheck do not put down roots. They follow the next paycheck out of town. Dawson Creek did not lose a war or a mine or a mill. It lost momentum. And on the prairies and in the north, momentum is the only thing keeping a lot of these towns on the map. Number 8, North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Picture a family that has been in this town for 3 generations. The grandparents retired here. The parents raised their kids here. And the kids, the ones just finishing school right now, are already looking at Saskatoon or Calgary or anywhere with more work and a hospital that is reliably open. That family is the whole story of North Battleford, a city that Statistics Canada recorded declining 3.4% between 2016 and 2021. And it connects to something bigger happening across rural Saskatchewan right now. In just one recent month, the province's own opposition counted 12 hospitals with emergency rooms that closed or had their service disrupted. When the ER in your town is closed more often than it is open, staying is not just inconvenient. For a young family, it becomes a genuine risk, and risk is what finally pushes people out. Number 7, New Waterford, Nova Scotia, on the eastern tip of Cape Breton Island. At its peak in 1961, Statistics Canada counted 10,592 people here. A coal and steel town with 4 elementary schools and a downtown packed with shops. The last coal mine closed in July of 2001. By the 2021 census, the population had fallen to 6,723, a drop of more than a third, including a decline of 9.3% in just the 5 years between 2016 and 2021 alone. Read that again. This is not ancient history. New Waterford lost 9% of its people in the most recent 5-year window we have data for, and it is not alone. Cape Breton's whole regional population fell 13% between 2001 and 2021, and it is now one of the oldest regions in the entire country. That is what happens after the industry leaves. Everything downstream of it, the schools, the shops, the tax base, keeps shrinking behind it for decades. Number 6. Grand Falls, Windsor, and the mining town of Buchans, in central Newfoundland. Grand Falls was born almost overnight in 1909 when a pulp and paper mill opened, and for 100 years the mill was the town. Then, in February of 2009, the mill produced its final roll of newsprint and closed for good, and central Newfoundland has been absorbing that shock ever since. But the sharpest version of it is just up the road in Buchans, a mining town whose population fell from 2,361 in 1971 to under 700 by 2011 after its mine shut down. Here is what nobody tells you about towns like these. Even the people who want to stay are running into a new wall. In a growing number of small Canadian communities in flood and wildfire zones, homeowners are now finding they cannot get affordable insurance at all. The Insurance Bureau of Canada estimates that up to 10% of Canadian homes are already, or will soon be, effectively uninsurable. And a house you cannot insure is a house you cannot sell and eventually cannot stay in. If you are still watching at number 6, you already understand something most people scrolling past this video never will. So let me tell you what the last 5 towns have in common before we get to them, because it changes how you see all of them. Every town left on this list was built to do one job, and the moment that one job stopped, the countdown started. The next 5 are where that math stops being slow and starts being brutal. Number 5, and this is the one that will surprise you, because it is not a village, it is a city. Thompson, Manitoba, 650 kilometers north of Winnipeg, a place that once had an estimated 26,000 people and was known as the hub of the North. Thompson was built by Inco in the 1950s for one reason: nickel. And today, that reason is walking out the door. The mine's owner, the Brazilian company Vale, employed roughly 1,450 people in Thompson in 2017. Then it closed a nickel mine, shut its smelting and refining operations, and cut the workforce towards 600. In 2019, the operation was losing $300,000 a day, and in 2025, Vale confirmed it was exploring a sale of the entire operation. Think about what that means for a city of around 13,000 people. Every school, every store, every mortgage in Thompson is downstream of one company's decision, made in a boardroom in another country, about whether the nickel is still worth pulling out of the ground. When the answer changes, the town does not get a vote, it just gets a moving truck. Number 4. Estevan, Saskatchewan, the self-described energy city in the province's southeast corner, population around 11,000. Estevan runs on coal. It sits next to the Boundary Dam power station, and roughly 1,000 jobs in the area are tied to coal mining and coal-fired power. When Ottawa set a 2030 deadline to phase out conventional coal power, Estevan's own mayor said the city projected it would lose 1/3 of its population, not 1/3 of its jobs, 1/3 of its people. Now, there is a live twist here, and I am going to be straight with you about it, because the facts moved recently. In 2025, the Saskatchewan government announced it intends to refurbish and keep those coal plants running well past 2030, so Estevan got a reprieve. But sit with what that reprieve actually tells you. An entire city of 11,000 people spent years watching its future hang on a single provincial decision about a single industry. That is not stability. That is a town holding its breath, and most towns on this list never got to exhale. Number 3. Little Bay Islands, Newfoundland, and Labrador. An outport on Notre Dame Bay that people had lived on since 1825. This one is different because nobody here was forced out by a fire or a layoff. They were paid to leave. Little Bay Islands was a real fishing town into the 1980s. Then came the 1992 cod moratorium, then the closure of the crab plant in 2010, and the working-age population left in waves until only 55 permanent residents remained. In February of 2019, every single one of them voted to shut the town down for good, under a provincial relocation program that has now emptied more than 150 Newfoundland outports since the 1950s. The province approved $8.7 million to fund the move, with payouts of $250,000 for single residents and up to $270,000 for families. On December 31, 2019, the ferry made its last crossing. The street lights went out. The water and the power were shut off. A town that had existed for nearly 200 years was switched off, because keeping the lights on for 55 people cost more than moving all of them somewhere else. So before the final two, here is the thread. 10 towns in 7 provinces that do not look related at all. But strip away the details, and there are only 3 forces on this entire list. 1, the single industry that built the town is winding down, and that is Corner Brook, Dawson Creek, North Battleford, New Waterford, Grand Falls, Thompson, and Estevan. 2, the pure math of staying stopped working, and someone, sometimes the residents themselves, finally decided it was cheaper to leave. That is Little Bay Islands. And 3, the ground itself and the climate above it is now driving people out and making the homes that remain impossible to insure. The last 2 towns are the clearest and the most current examples of that third force you will find anywhere in this country. Number 2, Jasper, Alberta, in the Rocky Mountains. And this is not a decline that took decades. It took hours. In July of 2024, a wildfire tore into the town of Jasper and destroyed roughly 1/3 of its structures, including around 350 homes and businesses. About 2,000 people lost their housing overnight. The Insurance Bureau of Canada pegged the damage at $880 million. And here's the part that matters for this list. More than a year and a half later, by March of 2026, only 14 households had actually moved back into rebuilt homes in the entire town. Jasper is not a poor or forgotten place. It is a world-famous national park town with hundreds of millions in government rebuilding money behind it. And it still could not put its people back in their homes quickly, because rebuilding after a climate disaster is slow, expensive, and uncertain, and a lot of families simply cannot wait years in a hotel to find out whether their town comes back. And number 1, Lytton, British Columbia, in the Fraser Canyon, because this is the one town on this list where the emptying is not finished. It is still happening. On June 30th, 2021, one day after Lytton recorded 49.6 degrees Celsius, the hottest temperature ever measured in Canada, a wildfire burned almost the entire village to the ground in a matter of hours. 2 people died. Before the fire, Lytton had about 210 residents. More than 5 years later, and despite more than $140 million in federal and provincial recovery funding, only about 75 people have returned, and only a handful of homes have actually been rebuilt. And then, in June of 2026, just weeks before this video, a brand new wildfire, the Saw Creek Fire, forced fresh evacuation orders in the exact same area, pulling the few people who had rebuilt right back out of their homes again. Lytton did not lose a mine or a mill. It lost the one thing every town on this list ultimately runs on. It lost the ability to convince its own people that staying is worth the risk. And right now, in 2026, the fire is still making that argument for them. So here is the real reason nobody is staying in these 10 towns. And it was never a ghost story. It is 3 things. The one industry that built the town is leaving. The math of staying stopped adding up. and the ground and the climate are turning the homes that remain into places you cannot insure and cannot sell. Every town on this list is some combination of those three, and the reason it matters to you is that those same three forces are moving through hundreds of communities that are not on any list yet. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 10 hit closest to home and whether there is a town near you where you are already watching this happen. Subscribe if you want the real numbers behind Canadian towns and Canadian housing every single week, not just the headline. See you in the next one.